Welcome to the About podcast. Here we explore your financial health in simple and easy to understand ways.
Well, welcome to the About podcast, where we talk about all things finance. Thanks for joining us today. I am your host without the infamous Jeremy Scott today. This is Roy Hucke, like Cookie. Jeremy is on spring break, if you will, so he needed to spend time with the family, so I just let him off the hook today. But I do have a guest, and it is a newly joined representative of the Credentialed Wealth team, Ben Sherlock. Welcome, Ben Sherlock.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
There's applause going on in my head.
Thanks for having me.
So today we're going to be talking about the Ben Sherlock story. Who are you? How did you journey your way to Credentialed Wealth? And what's your expertise? So let's just start with your financial journey. And I have a really vast knowledge of this, so I'll definitely poke you where I need to.
Please keep me honest here, because you've been a big part of that journey. So thanks for having me.
Yep. So, all right. So let's start. You're a financial advisor, highly experienced. What is it, like 16, 17 years in the industry?
On my 16th.
Cool. So first company you worked for was just a big bank, right? As I recall correctly. I
had a very unique front row seat to the biggest savings and loan failure in U.S. history.
Oh, very nice. That's always fun.
For those listeners who remember WAMU, Washington Mutual, I kind of backed my way into the banking world when I quit playing baseball years ago, and backed my way into it. And gosh, I think I started as a float teller. And when I took that position, I didn't even know what a float teller was. And I think I interviewed for it in a suit and tie, and they said I was the best dressed interviewee they've ever interviewed for a float teller position. So I didn't even know what a teller did or anything like that, and accepted the role. And within just, I think, 2 or 3 months, they had already promoted me into a lending banker for about 6-8 months. And then I was already in a management position from there. So
nice. So then you left the bank after how long? You were there for a few years?
Yeah, about 2.5, almost 3 years. I actually had a unique opportunity to move up to my hometown area and open a brand new Chase build. So when WAMU collapsed, right during the 08-09, JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, they kind of swooped in at the final hour and acquired WAMU, and they became Chase. So that's why I said I had a very unique vantage point. I had a front row seat to what that looked like. We didn't know if our doors would be open, if feds in suits were going to come swooping in, because we were having a run on the bank, no deposits left on the bank. It was a really, really funky time. But ultimately found a safe landing spot with Chase Bank and opened a brand new branch up here in Loveland, Colorado. About 17, 18 years ago, opened that, and then realized, managing people in an HR society, nothing wrong with it, but just not for me.
Yep. So you looked at some other alternatives. You ended up moving on to a big financial firm.
I did.
And became a financial advisor?
I did. I kind of realized that, after a few years of doing the banking thing, that, being in charge of my own success and my own career trajectory was a much better fit. So I did that for about 5 years with a large brokerage firm before I was presented with a couple new opportunities to put on a different hat with the same company, which was really interesting. So I was able to step into more of a business development role, working with brand new financial advisors, helping them grow their business, and sitting in on appointments of theirs with clients, giving them that real-time feedback, which was really valuable. And then the other half of that job for about 5-6 years was working with existing financial advisors that have been doing it 10, 20, 30 years, and really just focusing on, what is most critical with their business and what they're trying to do at that time.
So you worked with new advisors, veteran advisors. You've seen huge businesses, small businesses, and everything in between.
Yes.
And then from there, did you stay in that same company? Is that when you moved on? Like, did you transition to a different role? What was the next step?
Yeah. So after about 5 years of doing that business development role, that was right around that 10-year mark with the same company. And I had an opportunity to start flexing some different muscles, and was offered an opportunity to get my professional coaching credentials, which the art of coaching is a little different than what we think of with sports and athletics, right? With coaches, you basically are used to them telling you what to do, and through athletics my whole life. And it was definitely a surprise that coaching is just a very different art. So it really excited me. I think my wife probably was the most excited, for me to explore those, because I think the end product of becoming a professionally accredited coach is the whole idea is to make you more present, right? And stop thinking about what you want to say and how you formulate it when you're in the presence of somebody else who's speaking. And trying to find out what motivates them was really intriguing to me. And so I think overall, about 2 years in the coaching area of Edward Jones, I was able to go up to Coach University in Toronto and get professionally accredited as a coach and have thousands of hours of coaching other professionals in the industry, figuring out what's important to them and what motivates them. And versus somebody coming in and telling them what to do, they want to kind of fix this problem themselves. Versus, I just want to go hire a consultant or somebody else to kind of give me 2 or 3 ways of doing something, and then I'll go try those and then report back, or a trainer in a gym, right? You kind of lean on them, but you're the one doing the work. Coaching is very similar to that. So that's why I said I did that for a couple years and had thousands of hours of kind of putting people in that creative ownership space so that whatever they're trying to accomplish in their life, they get to be the ones in charge of figuring out, okay, how do I go about this? So I did that for 2 years, walked away with my professional coaching accreditations, my PCC, which has been really valuable in every chapter, every step of my life.
I look at the coaching aspect is a lot of times asking questions versus giving advice, right? Mm-hmm. And I look at it, financial advising very similar, because sometimes a client will come into me, they kind of want an answer, and by asking questions, they kind of answer their own question, if that makes sense, with what the answer is for them, because it's different for everybody. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoy that part of advising, because my job's not to tell you what to do, it's to kind of peel that onion away, like, okay, where are we actually going and why are we going there? And you're answering actually for yourself as I asked you some questions. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, well, I guess that's the answer. Well, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's like, oh, geez, it was pretty obvious.
You were spot on. And that's a really good parallel to the financial advising role. I think a lot of times most people are guilty of this, right? That advice monster wants to come out and we just want to share how much we know. Or as a husband, right? Just fix the problem. But my wife will be the first one to tell you, just listen.
I've heard that guys should definitely try and solve the problems. It goes really well at home.
That's why I said I think there was a number of light bulbs that went off as I was in Coach University and have spent thousands and thousands of hours training and coaching, is that sometimes the most effective thing I can do is not rely on how much I know or how much I think I know. It's listen and ask questions and get really curious. And I think when I can provide that space for a client or a coworker or my spouse for them to kind of hear themselves process things out loud and ask 1 or 2 questions and get them chewing on it, that's when the magic happens.
So, not to segue too far off, because this is good, but you said you have a spouse. I guess you should ask. You were married.
I am.
You have any kids?
Yep. Landry is our only daughter, and she turned 2 in November. So she's about 2.5.
And you have any furry animals?
We have a fur animal, a yellow lab Bentley. He's been with us for 10 years almost.
Bentley goes by B?
He goes by B.
So you're married to B's mom?
I am married to B's mom.
All right.
As she is fondly referred to.
Fondly referred to as B's mom.
B's mom.
And you got to meet B to understand why that's such a big deal.
He's unique. We had a black lab as well, and she was, part human, just super high IQ. B is low IQ, but we love him just as much. So there's a little running joke there.
Yeah. Okay. So, and her actual name is
Bentley.
No, her name. Your spouse's
name.
B's
mom.
Yeah,
Amber.
B's mom.
Yeah.
Okay.
My wife's name is Amber. We've been together almost 10 years, married for almost 6.
Fun fact for everybody listening, watching. I did actually marry Amber and Ben on a bridge in the mountains, snow covered, as I recall, 2 dogs.
Yep.
And it was quite an experience. Magical, I would say.
Yeah, it was.
The only thing would have made it better is if we had a slow, just dropping snowfall, right? But it was a quite clear day, sunny.
It was overly sunny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a really important thing for us, and we were honored to bring you in on that.
As is why, yes.
Honored to bring you in on that, and we were able to do that with Marley before we said goodbye to her, and we were able to get her paw print on the marriage certificate.
Nice, nice,
good
cool.
memory.
So that's your family life. I should have probably started with that, but hey, my co-host is gone, so we're just gonna free flow here. Okay, so then you have the coaching going on, and you transition from coaching because you said 2 years. What did you happen to do after that?
So same company, right? Same big company in the investment world. I was presented with an opportunity to go into the compliance area. There was a partner with the firm who had.
I'm adding some music in my head. Bum bum bum.
Yeah. I was always the guy for years and years who, when we're at meetings with our colleagues, whenever somebody from compliance would come up and talk, I would duck out in the back, go get coffee, go get whatever. And hey, haven't seen you in a while. Let's have a conversation. And it was really interesting to have spent about 2.5 years in that realm because I never saw myself in it. But it has given me an unbelievable vantage point of the other side. I would always equate it to playing offense and defense in business development, and even in the chair myself for 8 years. You're on offense. It's grow.
Yep.
And sometimes you run into the compliance folks at your company, and it's like a battle. Right? Offense versus defense. Whereas playing on the defensive side of the ball and learning the why behind a lot of things that doesn't always get explained real well, it was eye-opening and valuable experience.
I completely understand what you mean because I have the title of Chief Compliance Officer, bum, 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 for my own company right now, right? So I am that person, which, when you know the why behind things, it makes more sense. Like, well, this is happening because of this, but sometimes it's in a big company, right? It doesn't get explained because it kind of gets lost in translation because it's such a big company. Right. In a smaller company, you have the ability to maneuver and understand things at a little bit deeper level, which is really nice.
Yep.
Okay, so you went into that area, and then how did that proceed for you? I mean, was that kind of the offboarding point for you? You're obviously at Credentialed Wealth now, so kind of like what was the arc from current big company to coming to a company like Credentialed Wealth?
Yeah, I had a small cup of coffee right after the compliance gig, where I had a chance to take Amber and Landry, my wife, on the road and go back into the FA role with the same company. So it was more of a transitional advisor role. So if folks at our company were going through some type of transition, whether it's FA passes away or pregnancies, maternity leaves
got
are
sick.
A big one, sicknesses.
Accidents.
We've had folks go through cancer treatments at the firm, and they can't do their job, so we need to put somebody in there to continue keeping their office running with their clients. And so it was a really neat, unique opportunity, especially with the little one going on the road and navigating that. But we got a number of really neat opportunities to go all over the United States and plug in with some offices that were going through a certain type of transition. So I think that was ultimately the perfect transition into joining CWA, because it was starting to flex those muscles that I had not flexed in a while, dusting off the cobwebs.
Yeah.
And getting back into the right mindset of, okay, my clients no longer advisors. My clients are clients again. And that was, I think, a big part of the transition over here was getting able to do that again and get excited about the role.
So how was that experience for you then? If you're you're basically stepping into offices kind of like as a substitute, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, put me into the game, coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you get put into kind of a temporary situation. You know that, and the clients know that. Was that kind of difficult meeting people, getting to know them, and then be like, well, see ya, never going to talk to you again, probably?
Yeah. I mean, some things you hear every day, especially the ones where there was either an FA who passed away or was going through, it's an open office, right? Maybe an FA just decided, I don't want to be at this firm anymore, or I don't even want to be in this industry anymore.
Yep.
These clients are left wondering, who's taking care of me. And I always say this to my clients for years. Look, I could get hit by a bus later today. You're going to be sad for a day, maybe two, but by day 3, you're kind of wondering, who's helping
taking
me?
care of me here?
Yeah, who's helping me? And I think there's a human nature component to that, Roy. Yeah. And I got to see the other side of that. And it's true. And there's a lot of folks, and it doesn't mean that that's a bad trait. It just means I want to make sure that I'm still taking care of in spite of some of this transition that's going on. So it was pretty interesting. And what you would see is a lot of clients would really cling on. They would want to know that, hey, you seem really great. Any chance you're going to be my FA? And you hear that 25 times a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, which is quite interesting because, one of the reasons that you were recruited to a different company, right? Convinced, not so much maybe, but, at Credentialed Wealth, we wanted to have that same thing. Like if something happened to myself or my partner, Julian, what happens to the clients? And how do we make sure they're taken care of in a worst case scenario? And having that expertise that you're bringing to the table was actually a big part of that conversation for us. But also, you're in a much smaller company now, so you can actually get to know the clients and actually not be like, "See ya." You're like, "Hey, we've talked before. I know who you are. They know who you are. All that good stuff."
Right.
And having that safeguard built in for the clients to know that, like, hey, in a worst case, you're good. Like you're taken care of. Like we have the expertise.
That's right.
And I'm not hiring somebody in their first job ever, kind of thing, right? And filling a seat where like this is a veteran person. Knows what they're doing, could step into the role right now and actually have that deep conversation with you.
What's interesting about what you just said, Roy, is it takes me back to years and years ago when I was growing my business. You'd talk to clients and, typically you talk to the husband and you find out that, their spouse doesn't always know what would happen if something happened to them. And then you would see the moment where that hits them, right? They need to know who's helping them if something happens, right? And that's a contingency plan. There's peace as an end result of knowing, hey, this is going to continue to go on in spite of this, right? I want my wife to know that if something happens to me, it's Roy.
Yep,
it's CWA. And
I think that's in any relationship. It's funny because I have sometimes it's the woman, sometimes it's the man, but there's usually one of the two that is kind of leading the financial charge, if you will.
Yeah.
And yes, so requirement that I have typically is that you need to bring your spouse with you because they need to know who I am and I need to know who they are. And in the worst case scenario, I don't want them to look at you as a stranger, right? If something happened, God forbid, to the one who kind of had the relationship with us, right? So we have to have a relationship with both sides to help with that transition, right? So now it's not only do they need to know Roy, they also need to know Ben and Julian. And Becky, of course, is always everybody knows Becky,
yep.
right?
Yep.
But those are important. And we need to get a second Becky and, have that relationship built. But then people kind of know like, hey, we're good. Like we're taking care of these folks. These folks are going to be serving our best interests.
Yeah. And the parallel that I think I was making with that is, not every financial advisor, not every company, when they start, they have that contingency, right? Not CWA now has that, right? Knowing that, hey, this can be a well-oiled machine, but also if something happens to one of us.
Yep. Well, that takes us to our origin story, right? Julian and I launched. We check out the podcast, everybody, on the CWA story if you want to know more about that. But Julian and I launched the company together largely because of that reasoning, right? In a worst case scenario, you've got the other person, right? But now that we've grown, we need another person, right? We just can't do it all. One person can't do it all. So we need a Ben, right? To be able to help out in that regard. So it's been really, really cool to see you transitioning on board. We're at the end of nearly 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Man, it's blowing by, isn't it? Holy moly.
What happened?
So everybody, when this podcast drops, it'll be further than 3 weeks.
Yeah,
just so you know.
What happened? I blacked out.
Yeah, what happened? All this information we're force feeding you, right? This fire hose experience. But hey, you're getting the hang of it really quickly. And that's just text. That's just tech stuff. All the other stuff you know how to do already. So that's great.
I'm already doing my first podcast.
Your first podcast. Hope you're nervous.
Yeah, it's surprisingly calm.
Okay, so that's pretty cool. Then you transitioned into the advisor role. You kind of realized that you liked it. Was our conversation, right?
Absolutely.
But the hard part is like build a relationship, let go of a relationship, build a relationship, let go of a relationship. And then just so kind of everybody knows that, at one point I just approached Ben and just like, you know what? I feel like it's time. And it was just, for you, it was like, yeah, I think you're right. And then we had a little bit deeper conversation about that. But there was just, I guess, peace in my spirit about it, if you will, when I approached you. And I think likewise, you felt that. Is that accurate?
Oh, without a doubt. And I think most interesting thing about that is our conversations didn't just start, right, 3 months ago or 3 weeks ago. This was always a possibility given our friendship and relationship right outside of work. But, the timing, it just never seemed to the both of us that, look, now is the time. And what was so unique about, approaching you and when you approached me about it is it just seemed like for the first time we both knew. Mm-hmm. And this was right. And, it's absolutely humbling to be valued and feel filled up from that, knowing that, gosh, everything I had been doing for the last 20 years really is valued. That's a great feeling.
I think you have a very common story where you work, you build up your talents, mm-hmm. right? And I know a lot of my clients have expressed this as well, where when you're in a big company, the good of the big company is you get the resources of the big company. The bad of the big company is you kind of get lost in the wash sometimes, and everybody's just kind of having to struggle to do what they needed to do because there's so many demands everywhere, and then you don't feel valued, right?
Yep.
And that's a downside of a gigantic company of any kind.
Yeah.
And for you now, being in a small company, knowing that, Julian and myself are people who really appreciate your talents and what you bring to the table, we're hoping that that's going to be valuable to you as well. Right?
Absolutely. It's a good thing.
Cool. All right. So now we transition over here. You're going to work with the clients at CWA mm-hmm. and just help with anywhere we need to help. You're going to help with business development at CWA. You're going to help with just the growth of the company, right?
Client
and managing
experience.
that.
Yeah, client experience. If people need vacations, they need a break, right? Especially at a small company where there's less folks, less hands on deck. Mm-hmm. Being able to provide that stability and that seamless transition from the client aspect, right? The client service piece, that's a big part of it.
Yep. Well, and we have a Becky too, right?
That's right.
And but Becky needs vacations too.
Yep.
As much as I don't like it when she's gone, and I tell her every time. But we need to force Becky to take vacations too, so that she enjoys her day-to-day journey as well. And that's where you're going to be a valuable resource there too for us if somebody's out sick, all those good things. So we're client-wise, I'm very excited about that because there's going to be really no lapse for their experience. They're just going to call and be like, oh, hi, Ben. Right. I was trying to get Becky.
That's the idea.
It's like when I answer the phone, they're like, oh, I was trying to get Becky.
those are great moments to build relationships, right? When somebody is out, what better opportunity to get to know somebody?
Yeah, absolutely. So then let's talk about your personal journey a little bit on the financial side of things. I've had an intimate look at that. Good decisions, bad decisions, right? Which we all have done. Yep. All of our listeners have done. What would you say is your relationship with money and how you've kind of evolved that over time into now a marriage and a child and your future that you're building?
Gosh,
it's a big question.
That's a huge question because so much of that answer is closely tied to the decisions I've made outside of money, right? Like purely my personal life and some of that stuff. And then the financial consequences of those decisions, right? And I think, so much of my growth has come from the mistakes and learning from those and then having to answer the question, what type of man do you want to be? And what type of man are you going to be? And to be a man of honor, character, and integrity, which is something you had presented me with 15 years ago, it's almost like you're presented with a choice, right? And so, looking at our financial state 15, 20 years ago in your 20s, very different than now. And as that responsibility grows, I always said, and our church has always said the same thing, there's only one thing that separates a man from a little boy, and that's responsibilities. That's it. Every culture, and since the history of time, has had some type of ritual or something where, okay, you're a man. But it's really responsibilities. Are you going to meet those responsibilities and step up, or are you going to continue to be a little boy? Just because I can shave doesn't make me a man.
Yeah.
So I was presented with that crossroads in my life years and years ago. And that's why I said so much of my personal life is closely tied to our financial situation today, because I want to know unequivocally that the spending habits and the things that we do every day and where we are today is a reflection of who I claim to love and care about. Yeah. So there's no better reflection from the love of Amber and Landry and my family going forward than how I show them that I love them, and making sure she has enough life insurance, making sure our estate plan is set up, which we're in the process of getting going. All of those things are a reflection of what I claim, and that's I love my family, I love my girls. And so that's something that I've taken very seriously, because I really do believe that so much of this is just a reflection of, your actions speak louder than words. Well, this is a way to show them that I care about them and they are my priority by making sure that they don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're in a very different place financially. How I feel about money, the old adage, money is not my God. It's a very important tool. And I always said, like the Bible talks about, where your heart is, that's where you're going to spend your money and your time. You can never separate those two. And it's not that I'm perfect at any of those things, but they are cemented the forefront of my mind.
Well, yeah. And, having that, you have a home and you have an emergency fund and you have a plan for the direction you're heading into, having all of the life insurance and the estate planning. And, the estate planning, I think everybody, can relate to that. It's not a fun conversation. It's not fun to think about your death, but you're doing it not for you, but for someone else, right? And to have powers of attorney as part of that. Those are all important adult things to do, which, responsibility is that, right? Mm-hmm. That ravine that you're stepping over. And I was watching 300 the other night, and they used to send the kids out to fight wild animals. So Lex, we don't have to do that anymore, right? Yeah. If you come back, you're a man.
You're a man.
If you don't come back, you're done.
Yeah. There's a ritual. I mean, that's a perfect example.
Yeah. So those are really important things, and decisions that we make along that path, right? Good and bad. Because it's funny, because I remember you as a young man, really as an advisor. And you had a nice home, and then you ended up, taking a different role at the previous company, right? Mm-hmm. And you sold your home, you made a nice profit, and then I talked to you like a little while longer later, and it was kind of gone. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And that was one of those points in your life where I think you had a experience that changed how you wanted to pursue your financial dreams, I guess, if you will, right?
No doubt.
You definitely had a change when I saw you kind of go through that. Which we're all young and dumb. Like, we all make decisions like that, right? And we all have to have some sort of catalyst that's like, hey, I need to grow up. Yeah. And I need to make some different decisions for myself. Yeah. And from my own perspective too, right? Like, you buy something, you're like, why did I buy that? I don't need that. I don't want that even, right? And you just, like, at a certain point in your life, you're like, I'm going to make different decisions going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you had a front row seat. Like I mentioned, I had a front row seat to a pretty interesting time. You had a front row seat, knowing me then, and then seeing the person I am today, that growth. And same with you, right? We're never done growing.
No.
And
that's the fun part of life, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely. I don't want anyone close to me to look at me 20 years from today and say that I was the same as I was 20 years ago. I want them to see, a trajectory, right? And it's kind of like the stock market. It goes up and down, but over a longer period of time, it only goes one direction. You're going to get those ups and downs, but they get higher and higher. That's kind of my story. And
that's the fun part of it, honestly. Cause we were kind of joking around a day or two ago, right? And I was like, you're like, well, I wouldn't have come over here 10 years ago or something. Like, I wouldn't have hired you 10 years ago.
I wouldn't have been welcome 10 years ago. I would not have been welcome 10
But all
years
the
ago.
experience and life experience and work experience just led to a really nice, path, meeting. Yeah. And it makes perfect sense for both of us at this point in time. And the company loves to have the experience that you're bringing along, which is really fun to see. So that's been a really fun career arc, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. When you watch a movie, you kind of see the arc of the movie, right? And it's like, here's the arc of Ben's life and Roy's life kind of convening, if you will.
Yep. Full circle.
Which has been a lot of fun. So it's going to be really fun to see what things happen going forward for us and how we grow. And helping a multitude of clientele that is going to be a lot of fun to plan for. And I geek out on the planning, so that's my fun piece. Julian is the geek out on the investing, and that's his fun piece. And the cool thing is that you got both of us to lean on to, and the experience that you bring to it is, oh man, it's just amazing. So
thank you.
So going forward, do you have any fun facts or thoughts for our audience, financially speaking, that you'd like to share with us?
Put me on the spot.
I am putting you on the spot on purpose.
That's all right. I mean, you never know what's going to come out after that. But
just don't worry. We can edit that.
Yeah, we'll just edit the question out and anything that follows. No, I mean, in all honesty, I'm kind of in the sponge mode right now. You have all this experience from a big company, right? And all these things that sometimes you want to come in and just make a splash. But the reality is I want to rein that in a little bit. And my dad always told me since I was a young boy that he never saw me step upstairs one at a time. I was always jumping up like 6, 7, 8 stairs, as many as I could. And this is the point of my life where I know that this is a season, and I'm wanting to come in and ask more questions than I am trying to show my worth and my value. So I think it's really important for me to kind of slow down, ask a lot of questions, sponge up, like the coach approach, and before I think that I know what, is valuable to somebody else, whether it's a client, whether it's a coworker. That's kind of the season I'm in right now.
It's a fun season to be in.
Yeah.
Because it's a patience season.
Yep.
Which actually I say is fun, but I also hate. I don't like patience. I'm very impatient.
Yeah.
But when I have to be patient, it's kind of nice because you're forced. So for instance, I like to travel. One of the reasons I like to travel is because when you're on an airplane at 35,000 feet over an ocean, not a whole lot you can do.
Yeah.
Right. So it forces me into this time period of having to be patient to get to the destination or whatever. But you have to kind of disconnect from life, if you will, sit in the moment. And it's funny because you can get a lot of growth. You can get a lot of ideas, have a lot of thoughts. And sometimes in the day-to-day life, we're like, think, consume. We got March Madness going on right now. So you're like, you get all these basketball games you want to watch and check out. And then you look at the end of your day and it's like your mind's been going constantly. But when did you actually stop and think like in the moment versus just whatever was kind of being fed to you, if that makes sense?
It does.
So it's a fun season and a very frustrating season at times. But we do need it, I think. And sometimes we be forced into it. That's why travel for me is important because otherwise I don't do it.
It's huge and it's going to be different for everybody, right? And when you transition away from a huge Titanic of a company to a smaller company and you don't take any time off between that, it's also a season where I'm trying to be intentional about catching my breath from the pace that you'd been running professionally with a toddler at home, right? Making sure that my marriage is the, second most important relationship in my life prior, second to my relationship with the Lord.
Bee's mom is important.
Bee's mom is up there. And so I think trying to figure out where do I squeeze in catching my own breath before you just hit the ground running and so that's why I'm kind of like, respect the process and catch your breath. And that's different for everybody.
Yeah. And getting to know the clientele and to the
Huge.
systems and tools that we use and all those fun things,
Yep.
By being slow and intentional.
That's right.
It's fast as slow as fast or something like that. Is that a saying?
Yep. Yep.
And actually I'm thinking of that saying, but also in the movie with Mel Gibson, The Patriot.
Oh yeah.
Aim small, miss small. It's what's coming to mind, where sometimes we just have to, focus on the little things so that we can actually see the big picture.
That's right.
Well, wonderful. Well, I think that's probably all we have to say about that, as Forrest Gump would say. Well, thank you, Ben, for joining us, sharing a little bit of your story. Thank you, audience, for listening. And, like, share, subscribe, do all the fun stuff if you enjoyed this. If you have ideas for content in the future, we just wanted to get you a little bit more familiar with one of our newest members around the Credentialed Wealth team and the About podcast, where all things are about finance. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming, Ben. We really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
CWA is a Securities and Exchange Registered Investment Advisor. No content contained herein should be construed as an offer for investment advice or an offer for the purchase or sale of any security, insurance, or other investment product. Investments involve the risk of low loss, including loss of principal. Please consult with a qualified financial, tax, or legal professional before implementing any strategy presented here. Data presented here are obtained from believed reliable sources but cannot be guaranteed as to completeness or accuracy.